Today on Guitar Lab, we're going to change the bridge pickup in this guitar. Hi everybody, welcome back to Guitar Lab. I'm Sean. I hope you're having a great day. I thought that I would show you guys how to do a pickup swap in a guitar. We're going to do just the humbucker in this guitar. We're going to change it out to one that's like the exact same style, but a nicer one. The one that was in this is the Jackson pickup that came with it, which is ridiculously cheap, and arguably I'm replacing it with another cheap pickup, but I really like the Epiphone classic type pickups that come in the Les Paul Customs, and in this case it's going to be one of the I think it's the KD model Epiphone pickup that they put in the SGs. Love the sound of them. They take distortion great, have a really good kind of bitey sound, far more clarity than the pickup that came in this from the factory. And I thought I'd take you through the steps and show you how to do it. So first off, I have to remove the pickup from the pickguard that this is in from the previous project that I had. This has been like this for quite a while. I haven't used this in a while. You see what I did there with that soldering, that little gold thing wipes old solder off a tip. I cannot stress to you how important that is. And as you can see here, I melted the lead wire and pulled it off. I much prefer desoldering rather than cutting. I do wind up cutting the ground wire off this because this pickup has plenty of lead on it, and I didn't want to disturb the other ground wires in case I wire this back up again. So that's the disassembly. It actually went that quickly. So now I don't want to de-string this, so I'm going to keep the strings on it so I can put them back on. They're still relatively new strings. So what I do is I release the nut and loosen all the strings up, and then I take out the tremolo springs, as you can see here. I always try to hold this in place by the tremolo block like that, and then flip it over so it doesn't come out and scratch the guitar or anything like that. It's just to be careful. And as you can see, I can lift the entire thing out in one piece, and then I can work on the guitar from there. First thing is to remove the 4 retaining screws for the plate. I didn't say before, these instructions would be appropriate for any ring-mounted type pickup guitar. So Paul Reed Smith, Jackson, Les Pauls, SGs, anything like that would be appropriate for these instructions. So you remove the 4 screws for the pickup ring, set them aside. Now I'll take the 2 screws that actually retain the pickup in the ring itself and completely unscrew them all the way off so the pickup drops off. Now the pickup that I'm putting back in here again is the exact same size as the one I'm removing, so I'm going to reuse all of the original Jackson assembly parts. The pickup ring, you can see I take the springs out here. Now what I like to do here is just double check the wire coming off the pickup so I know what color it is. Now Jackson has these where they're pretty thick black wires that has the both the positive and negative are together. However, the hot lead coming out of it is red, as you'll see in a moment, and the negative is just it's not even in a casing. It just goes around the outside of the red wire in the larger black casing. So now we're going to take the 4 screws out of the control cavity cover. You can see a little piece of foam I like to use. Every tremolo equipped guitar I have has a little piece like that in there to prevent like ringing after you've sounded a note. That for some reason that bothers me. Some people it bothers, some people it don't. Some people it doesn't, I should say. Now this I've never touched, so it still has a little wire tie in there to keep everything neat. Honestly, I don't replace that when I put this back together again. It's a purist may say it's necessary. I don't see where it makes that big of a difference. So what we're going to do here is the exact same thing we did in the pick guard a moment ago. I'm going to heat that wire up on the first lug, which is the you can see the big thick wire, the black thick wire, and the little red positive wires coming out of it, and that is what goes onto the first lug of the 5-way switch, and that is the only one that we need to remove for this particular procedure. Now this is a little bit tighter in here, so, and that wire does get hot when you start soldering it up. So I'm going to grab it with my needle nose pliers and just put a little, very, very light, not hard at all, pull on it, and then I'm going to heat this up. Now remember that gold thing that I told you that looks like steel wool that cleans the solder off of the tip of soldering iron? I didn't do that before this, so it has like a lot of carbon and filth built up on it. Otherwise this would happen almost instantly, where it would heat the solder and you could take this off, but I failed to clean it, so it takes a minute here for the heat to go through, and of course there it goes. I'm going to do the same thing here as well to the ground side. I just cut it off. Oh, before I do that, in a moment I'll show you why it's really better for you to have an actual hole where you can feed the wire through before you apply heat to it. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm heating the solder up and making a hole with it with my little awl there so that I can put the new wire into it very easily. However, what I was saying, the ground wire here I'm also going to cut off of this. This pickup has plenty of lead if I should ever decide to reuse it, which I can't imagine I'm ever going to. I've taken them out of both of the Jacksons I have now, and I have actually quite a few of those Epiphone pickups that I like laying around here that I bought off of eBay. You can get them for like 20 or 30 bucks pretty cheap, and I think they sound fantastic. So pull that out of there. There you have it. Yeah, that's a Bellcat. So I think it's some manufacturer in China. I think you can find that brand on AliExpress if you look there. There's the new one I'm putting in. Like I said, that's an Epiphone KD model, and I believe that came out of an Epiphone, not the Pro model, the regular Epiphone SG, because it doesn't have the coil split on it. It's just 2 lead. Now, like I said, I'm going to use the exact same equipment, all the installation equipment that was original on the Jackson, which makes things easier. So that's the original ring, the original screws, the original springs. So we're going to load the new pickup into it. Another one of my favorite tools is my little screwdriver drill that I bought here. I got that on Amazon for like 12 bucks, I think. Might have even been less than that. So get that set up on there. Now when I feed the wires through the hole here, and initially I had a little bit of trouble, this hole for the wires going into the control cavity is really big. But if that would have been a little more narrow, you can put a piece of electrical tape around the end to kind of make it easier to feed wires through. But that really was not necessary here. I just straightened them back up again and it went right through. But if the hole for the control cavity would have been smaller, you put a little piece of electrical tape on it to hold the wires together, and it makes it feeding through substantially easier. Yes, make sure you put it in the correct direction. Of course, if this was a Les Paul, the pickup ring's wider on the side towards the bridge than it is on the side towards the neck. So the pickup ring has to be oriented the correct way. On this particular guitar, it doesn't matter. It's the same size both directions. Yeah, and I'm typically kind of terrible at keeping my guitar as polished and clean. So whenever I do take stuff apart like this, I always try to clean it before I put it back together again. It's so much easier to do when everything's apart like this than it is when it's back together again. Now, if you're not aware of this, I always called this the old mechanic trick. When you're putting like 4 screws back into this like this, put them in and just start them. Don't tighten them down. So just start all 4 screws, then tighten them down. Because if, for instance, if you would have put the one in there and the other 3 holes would not have been lined up and you tighten the one down, then you have a problem getting the other 3 to line up correctly. So if you just put them in almost all the way down to where the point where they're snug, but just before they actually get tight, so they're still almost like finger loose in the hole. Get all 4 of them in there, and then at that point you can snug them down. And of course, you're just going into wood here, so you don't need to torque these down, just to the point where they're getting tight. And in fact, just to be on the safe side here, I didn't even use my drill or my electric screwdriver. I got a Phillips head out and did it manually, just so I was sure I wasn't over torquing them to strip them out. Which is not the end of the world if you do that, but try and keep it nice as long as you can. So that's it. The pickup's completely installed. Now we have to flip her back over and we'll make the connections. Now, part of soldering stuff back together again is if you can make a mechanical connection, it makes things much easier. Also, you can see there's a little bit of straggly wire on that ground, so I cut that off so it's nice and clean. So I put that positive back into the little hole I made, remember, with the awl, so that I had a hole where I could put the wire in so that it stays in place. And that way you don't have to fuss with it when it comes solder time. Now this happens pretty quick, so the trick to doing a solder joint here is to heat the metal up enough that the solder melts on the metal. So if you can see here, I touched the soldering iron right to the edge, but I'm melting the solder on the metal itself. And you can see it melts on the wire and on the connection. That is a good solder connection right there. So the only other thing we have to do is the ground. Now there's already solder on there from where the original stuff was. So I hold I hold the ground wire in place with the flat edge screwdriver. Makes it easier with the flat edge to hold it in place, and just touch the solder that's already on the connection. I didn't have to add any solder to this. Cool it off. This is effectively done at this point. The new pickup is in, it's wired, makes connection, everything's good to go. Like I said, I don't put a wire tie back on that. I don't find it necessary. And at some point in the future, I will probably go back through that and put better pots in it, and like a proper good like Fender 5-way switch. I'm a little bit less careful with these screws. I mean, you still don't want to strip them in there, but these screws are a little bit thicker, so they're slightly more forgiving than the 4 screws that are on the pickup ring. Another thing I would normally do, if this was a more complicated wiring thing that I was doing here, I would test it before I put it back together. But seriously, all I did here was 2 solder connections, so I'm pretty confident that what I did there was correct. So we can just put the tremolo block back in, make sure that it's lined up correctly, hold it in place while I flip it over, and then let the weight of the guitar push it down and hold it in place. Now, what I'm about to do here, I'm sure will cause some endless debate. I do this the way that 35 years of guitar playing has taught me, and it's simply the way I like the feel of the tremolo by doing it this way. I understand the physics behind what I'm about to do. I understand all of that. The tremolo feels better to me when I put the 2 side springs in like this. I know that there is a massive amount of argument happens online about people who do this, and I simply don't care. I like it this way. It feels better to me, so it's the way I do it. And of course, there's my little piece of foam to keep it from ringing. Even went back in tune. How cool is that?